Okay. You can call me Moshe. This is my channel. And turn this in a tiny bit better. Today is October 30th. It's Monday, 10:02 in the morning. And it's not going to be as hot as we have seen it. It's, well, maybe not going to be that great either. It's waiting for it to load the weather. It's 80 degrees, high of 85, low of 70. So our heat wave looks like it's going to be gone for the foreseeable some days ahead, according to the weather, which is nice. At 85, we're so used to heat over 100. We could sit outside as long as it's in the shade without any problem, really. So now it's like I can go outside whenever I want. I don't like walking around, like walking to the store and stuff, unless it's no more than 80, because it gets in the sun, it gets, you know, I'm old and I don't like getting all that in the sun. So if it's 80, I don't mind. I don't go taking hikes at 85. In New York, when I grew up, it would be considered a heat wave at 85. Let me work on the chat for a minute. Let's see. A little bit of work while we wait for people to come in. It's not going to be a big deal here. Okay, we do have sound and picture. Working fast here. So our time already moved back in Israel. So the time clock is probably off compared to what you used to. Okay. Let's do our praise. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 Okay. So the theme today that I'm going to explain to you, I've given you the scriptures over and over. On Telegram, on here, on Twitter, that America's the daughter of Babylon, and I proved it with the scriptures. If any of you would like to look at my website, which has many Bible studies, there's nothing on the website but Bible studies. The website is moshehacon.com. MOSHEHACOHEN.com. moshehacon.com. Okay? I can put that up in the chat too. Why not? All right. I want to take you now to further help people that are choking on America is the daughter of Babylon. And I want to do this using news from the past. And I'm going to periodically show you headlines and stuff like that. Now, I have all these news articles up in my Telegram. You click on it has the front page picture, mostly newspapers. It opens up and you go to the site. Telegram is free, it's great, 700 million members. Not everybody has a piece of equipment that'll work with it, I know that. That's why I'm putting this up on YouTube too. But you download the app, Telegram Messenger, it's free. Then you send me an email. My email address is israelgiving7@gmail.com. Okay? Israelgiving, one word with the digit 7@gmail.com. I think it's on the YouTube channel someplace too. And just put Telegram in the subject header and I'll send you the invite link for Telegram. But I'm going to continue working on YouTube. So make sure you're subscribed and you click the notification bell so when I come on all of a sudden, because something critical happened here, you will be getting the notices. Okay? Alright, so we're going to go back originally to 1939. Israel was not Israel. It was called Palestine, but there were a lot of Israelites living here. I want to get the details, so give me a minute. This is coming from history.com, which is considered a pretty reputable site. I'm waiting for it to load. Here's the headline. Okay? I'll explain the article to you. In 1939, Hitler had already started with his concentration camps and rounding up the Jews. He was in pretty good swing already. There was a ship called the MS St. Louis, ST.LOUIS. It cruised off the coast of Miami in June of 1939. Its passengers see the lights of the city of Miami glimmering. But the United States, now Miami was a resort back then, but it wasn't a summer resort. It was for the winter and the fall and stuff like that. Mostly people from the north went down there. Lots of Jews went to Miami, and they would usually leave. Most of them would stay till even Thanksgiving, you know, or 1st of November, when the weather started getting cold, but they still weren't getting snow. They stayed in New York and then they took off in November typically. Some would probably leave in October or even, but you know, October Miami was still hot, so they didn't want to go down there either. So around Thanksgiving, Miami would be pretty temperate. You might even need a light jacket at night, a little cotton jacket or something for me, and something like that, right? And during the day, you know, maybe every now and then you'd need air conditioning, but typically you wouldn't. You just open the windows, use a fan. All right. So they went down there then, and they usually stayed until by Easter they took off, you know, because it started getting hot. Some would go early April, but it was still nippy up north, so they stayed down there. So it was a large Jewish resort. And with air travel, there were doing that. And then they were also going by train. It probably took about 24 hours to get up there by train. They also had ships that would go back and forth. A lot of people were still going to the Caribbean countries in the winter for vacations, and ships were leaving from New York and northern ports to go to the various Caribbean islands. Nassau would be one. There was quite a few that they'd go to. Jamaica, I suppose. Virgin Islands, British Orient. They had plenty of places to go where there were nice beaches and stuff like that, but also was Miami. Okay, so that's why they went to Miami. But the United States hadn't been on the ship's original itinerary, so you see they diverted course. And its passengers didn't have permission to disembark in Florida. As the more than 900 Jewish passengers looked longingly at the twinkling lights, they hoped against hope they could land. Those hopes would soon be dashed by the immigration authorities of America, sending the ship back to Europe. And then nearly a third of the passengers on the St. Louis were murdered. Most of the ship's 937 passengers were Jews trying to escape Nazi Germany. Though World War II had not yet begun, the groundwork for the Holocaust was already being laid in Germany, where Jewish people faced harassment, discrimination, political persecution. But though the danger faced by the passengers was clear, they were turned down by immigration authorities, first by Cuba, no surprise, then the United States and Canada. Canada too. For many on the St. Louis, that rejection was a death sentence. Okay? Israel had not even yet been a nation, and it started. This is Satan pushing the buttons of his political leaders. Okay? And we're going to go forward in time. I'm going to bring up a lot of these incidences, and you're going to see the headlines and everything else. One thing I just want to bring up, I'll read it from my Telegram post. We don't see America giving Israel napalm, which they so fondly used in Vietnam many times. The napalm, when little bases were overrun in Vietnam, like they might have had 50 or 60 guys, Marine or airborne, and they would have an outpost base, and they would dig themselves bunkers that were like under the ground, but nothing like what you see today. What I mean? Be 6 or 8 or 10 feet down or something like that. Because the attack weapons were just artillery shells that were not huge, and mortars. And they fortified. Sometimes it was just in the ground several feet, and they fortified it up on top with various things like wood structure with a lot of sandbags and things like that, where they could withstand attacks. And they had multi-layered barbed wire fences around their encampment, okay? Which probably was maybe, a big one might have been 10, 15 acres. A little one maybe 4 or 5 acres. They weren't huge. I was not in the war, okay? I never did military service. I was ex-law enforcement when I was young, not military. So they had multi-layers of fences, and they had mines, and they had these devices you put in the ground, and they were curved, and they were TNT, and they had like BBs in there, and it had a thing that said face towards the enemy, and they could detonate those things and blow the enemy up when they were coming in, remote detonators. Forgot what you call those things. A claymore. And if they were getting overrun, what would happen is it maybe be 50 or 100 of these guys in there, and they were well taken care of by the military as far as those standards go. Every day they would get airlifted food and supplies and ammunition and medical and whatever they needed by helicopter. And they used to get steaks every day, and these guys had barbecues. They got charcoal bricks. They really did. And it was hot out there. They walked around mostly without shirts on. And they would barbecue their steaks. They also brought them beer, cases of beer. So they would be drinking beer. Now, if you're drinking beer out in the hot sun, I used to do this in Florida, where I went to college for my last years of college. And it'd be pretty hot, it'd be 90 or so, and I'd go out and lay down by the pool or on the roof, sun deck on the shade lounges. And I used to buy the big cans of Busch Bavarian. I was not a believer then. And I would study, and I would be drinking the beer while I was studying. And we're having an issue with the internet again, and I wonder why. Okay, I'm going to take a chance and switch the network. It'll take a second. Keeps happening when I'm doing live streams and not other times. You know what I mean? There's more false believers here in Israel per capita than I think any place in the world. Satan has loaded this place up. Okay. So when they would be getting overrun, the Vietnamese would come in the hundreds, and they had artillery pieces and mortars, and they would start pounding the base, which would cause the Marines or the soldiers to go into foxholes. They couldn't hide in the bunker because they had to defend themselves from the onslaught. And generally tanks were not being used. It happened, but not often. Running tanks through the jungle was not an easy thing to do, and they would, get in foxholes. They had machine guns, assault weapons, grenade launchers, and various things. They had a few artillery pieces in the interior usually, and they would start using those. But the Vietnamese or the regulars or the Viet Cong would keep running at them. They'd keep coming, and they'd kill a lot of them, and they'd keep coming. And they would, have tools and cut the barbed wire fences. And it was layers. Usually they had 2 or 3 layers of barbed wire fences. And then they'd come in, and sometimes they hit landmines. Sometimes they had claymores, and they had a long cable on it. They'd pull them and detonate. Or the claymore had a trip cord, and they would trip it, and they'd keep coming and coming. And when it looked like there were so many they were going to get overrun, they called for airstrikes. So American jets were normally flying around in the air all the time, loaded with weapons, and they would give them the coordinates, and they would come in. Sometimes they would fire a smoke grenade at the spot to mark it for them, like a yellow or purple smoke or something. And they would come in, and they had options. They dropped, sometimes gunships came in and shot them up with machine guns. Puff the Magic Dragon, other planes. And sometimes they dropped regular bombs on the enemy. And a lot of times they dropped napalm on them. So the plane's moving and the napalm's in a big canister bomb. They drop it, and the napalm has a forward momentum from the plane. So the canister breaks, and the napalm spreads out in flames and burns the enemy up in a horrific death. Okay. This was a favorite tool of America. In that famous movie Apocalypse Now, you see Robert Duvall playing a air air cavalry colonel, and he's standing there with no shirt on and his big air cavalry black cowboy hat on. And they're under attack from the enemy. This is in Vietnam. They're one of the rivers, Mekong, and they had enemy around there attacking them. He called in an airstrike, and they came, and they dropped napalm. And then he says, nothing like the smell of napalm in the morning. It was used commonly. Okay, and it singed them, burned them to a crisp. And they didn't use it 10 times or 100 times, probably thousands of times. And would also burn the land up, too. They didn't send a fire airplane full of water to put the fire out when it was over. You know, it would keep burning for a while. And that ruins the vegetation, which ruins the land. Then they had another trick. The Vietnamese regulars, the Viet Cong, in the rainforest type places, the jungle they called it. It was dangerous for the soldiers to go in there because, well, the special forces, the Green Berets, the Delta, the Navy SEALs, even some airborne rangers and others were trained very well in jungle warfare. The regular troops weren't. They probably had a good 3 to 6 month course in the jungle warfare, where they were taken to jungles. I think they were using Panama at the time, something like that. Rainforest type jungles. And they taught them how to hide in the jungle, how to find somebody in the jungle, how to track in the jungle, how to work or know the different animals and bugs and snakes and birds in the jungle, and how to eat there if you had to. They got very good at it, but the other 96-7% of the troops didn't know that much about jungles, and it was very dangerous for them when they were in the jungle. They gave them anti-fatigue pills, which was speed, dexedrine, benzedrine, and the human body as a young kid can take the benzedrine, dexedrine for about 3 days, and then it doesn't work anymore. And that's how long the patrols were. So it was such a crazy thing at night. These guys were sitting in the jungle, smoking marijuana, taking other drugs, hash or whatever, and staying awake on benzedrine so they wouldn't get ambushed, right? And by the time the third day come, they were jumping out of their skin. They were irritable and everything else, right? It's a bad idea. They gave this to people during the wars. I think they still do in survival kits. Like if you got to abandon your boat or abandon your plane, they have survival kits. And because they might have to evade the enemy, they couldn't afford to just rest and sleep. Plus, if they had injuries, the benzedrine, dexedrine would help a lot with not feeling the pain, although it wasn't morphine. I think they give them mild pain pain pills too, probably things like aspirin or Tylenol with codeine, not real strong stuff, but enough to help get the edge off, If they started giving them morphine syringes, they'd fall asleep wherever they were, probably for an hour or two, and they could get captured. So they give them these anti-fatigue pills to take if they're in a real problem and they're exhausted. They could take the pill and get an extra few hours before they're exhausted again. But taking them, days in a row is not a great idea. So they would come back after a 3-day patrol, and they would get back to their base, and they were exhausted. So they would just collapse, and they would sleep often for 24 hours because they hadn't slept for 3 days. They would also drink. They'd get back and they started eating the beer or the cognac or whatever they had there, and they would go to sleep, and they'd get up and they'd start eating and taking a shower and doing what they needed to do, and then I think they had like 2 or 3 day rest, and they went out for another 3 days. These were the patrols. So they had a lot of trouble. So they developed a chemical called Agent Orange, which they dropped in the jungles, and it would take all the vegetation off the trees. So what was left there was bare trees. Of course, the animals are getting wiped out. It's ruining the climate and land, and it also, in the long run, came to cause lots of bad health effects on the soldiers um, that some of them never got rid of. I don't know if they knew that at the time. I doubt they did. They didn't want to injure their soldiers, but it wound up happening. So why don't they try giving us napalm? See what I mean? Well, now they don't use napalm, you know. But when they got desperate and they weren't even fighting for their homeland, they used napalm. Enough on napalm. The reason I bring that out is the napalm using country tells us through Biden yesterday to turn the internet back on in Gaza. Well, it's an obvious fact they use the internet with their cell phones to send combat instructions to each other, the Hamas people. And he tells us to turn it back on. Do not listen to the words that these people tell you to justify their actions. Look at their actions. Look at their actions, because they're always going to give you a good story of why they did it, but look at their actions. I'm going to jump up to 1973 now, where we had the war, the Yom Kippur War. And it's coming from a site called jstor.com. It's on my Telegram. The American airlift to Israel in the 1973 Yom Kippur War. When the Yom Kippur War broke out, Israel turned to the United States, asking for a quick replacement of the arms it was losing in the war. It took more than a week before the Americans launched a massive airlift to Israel, consisting of the supply Israel was asking for. The feeling in Israel and in latter historiography is that the Nixon administration had deliberately delayed the airlift for reasons that are subject to historical debate. Some put the blame on Schlesinger, the Secretary of Defense, and some on Kissinger, Henry Kissinger, the Secretary of State, and the President's National Security Advisor. The article suggests a different explanation, according to which, on the one hand, for the Americans, the delay was not really a delay, and on the second hand, the way Israel made the request did not transmit to the administration the sense of emergency Israel was feeling. Okay, basically Nixon delayed the shipment for something like 7 days. And Israel was at war, being surrounded by their lovely enemy nations, fighting desperately. Okay? But they did help Israel. Did they perhaps think Israel wouldn't be around at the end of that week? You ask yourself that question. Well, let's look at some more evidence for this, okay? Here's the headline. Kissinger told Soviet envoy during 1973 Arab-Israeli war, "My nightmare is a victory for either side." The Soviet agreed. You hearing this? Kissinger told Russia, "My nightmare is one side or the other wins." Right after this 73 debacle with old tricky Dick Nixon, he got impeached. Okay, we got a lot more. Takes a minute to load. I'm loading it through Telegram and then it's super fast when you send it to the internet. It'll load. There it goes. Kissinger. There it is. There's the article. Kissinger denies delaying weapons airlifts to Israel during the 73 war. Iconic top U.S. diplomat says supply complicated by logistical issues, and Washington initially thought Israel was already winning, which is a load of crap. They delayed the launching of the aid for 7 days, okay? And this establishes there was a delay, but he's giving you words, his alibi stories, as to why it happened, and it should be considered innocent when it wasn't. Our guys were getting killed back then on an hourly basis or daily basis. Father God Jehovah does not call her the daughter of Babylon for nothing. If it didn't say daughter of Babylon, it said America, no country would call themselves America. If it said Freelandia, no country would call itself Freelandia. So he did it allegorically. Now we'll jump ahead to Clinton. Am I getting this good? Good enough, I guess. Okay. A headline from Times of Israel. From 29 July 2018. Newly released minutes show U.S. pressure on Israel to leave the West Bank in 1978. Biden is still doing that. Every time he opens his yapper, he talks about a two-state solution. That's reversing Bible prophecy. The land that God gave us, we don't keep. We act in fear of man and give it back to our enemies who are worshiping false gods. You shall have no other gods before me. Worshipping false gods in Israel to be an insult to Father God Jehovah, not trusting him and turning to the enemies. Fearing man, not God. Now we'll switch to the Sinai Peninsula. Okay? There's the article in Wikipedia. Israel occupation of Sinai Peninsula. The Sinai Peninsula came under military occupation by Israeli forces after Israel's seizure of the region from Egypt during the Six-Day War in 1967. Israel provisional control over the Sinai Peninsula ended in 1982 following the implementation of the 1979 Egypt-Israel peace treaty, which saw Israel return the region to Egypt in exchange for the latter's recognition of Israel. So this mental midget, Jimmy Carter, comes to get Egypt and Israel together, Menachem Begin and Anwar Sadat, I think in Camp David, and keeps them there for days and bangs out some deal where Egypt will say they recognize Israel as a sovereign nation, and then Israel gives back the Sinai Peninsula, which had gasoline in it, gas, oil. So we were able to provide our own oil, gas for the cars. They didn't want that. Life should be easy in Israel, more Jews will come here. And this is reversing Bible prophecy, the land that Father God, Jehovah, gave us in Genesis 15 by covenant. By a covenant. God made a covenant. From the Euphrates to the Nile and the Mediterranean to the Persian Gulf. We start taking some of that back, and America forces us to return it to the original occupier before us, but after us really, but that was Egypt. So that too is reversing Bible prophecy with a new approach. No more attacks. Get Israel scared enough to do it on their own, and then the sin's on Israel. Well, it's not working that way anymore. Here's a very interesting quote from former President Bill Clinton. Says, I killed myself to give the Palestinians a state. Now that's reversing Bible prophecy, and he talks about what he did to get Israel to give land back. You see their motivation? I'm going to now drop the first of two big bombs on you about what America did. Talks about a U.S. arms embargo on Israel 1947 to 1948. Let me read this to you. The most important result of State Department opposition to the Zionist project, that's what they were calling us, the Zionist project back then, was the imposition in November 1947 of an embargo by America on arms to the Jews in Palestine and to the Arab states. So they put an arms embargo on everybody, okay? The chapter examines official reasons for the embargo as well as efforts to lift it by American liberals. So because they want the embargo lifted, they're a liberal, including Senator Robert F. Wagner. He was the former mayor of New York, I think. Congressman Emanuel Seller and journalists as well as I.F. Stone, among others. Now, at the same time, the UN put an arms embargo on Israel in 1948, and America did previous to that. And Russia violated the arms embargo and was supplying weapons to the Arab states that were attacking Israel, including aircraft, artillery, everything. So Israel turned to Czechoslovakia, now this is right after World War II, the Holocaust, and they denied obeying the ban, the arms embargo on Israel, and sold them weapons. Sadly, the weapons were old World War II weapons that needed to be reworked over to get them functioning. Yes, America and the UN put an arms embargo on Israel, knowing that they were going to attack us, knowing Russia was supplying them with weapons. Let's go back to the Holocaust a bit. Here's the headline. It talks about why Auschwitz, the big concentration camp, was not bombed. Now, the American government was being requested to bomb Auschwitz. It came out that it was obviously there, and everybody knew where Auschwitz was, and they asked them to bomb it, and they said, well, we don't want to bomb it. You know, we might hit civilians, we can't get it precise, all the excuses, which stemmed that they would kill the Americans and the other, well, they weren't very many Americans, and the civilians that were being held at the camps. The idea was to blow up the gas chambers and the ovens and everything else, and America was asked many times by Jewish organizations, and they never did it. And they were always saying, well, we can blow them up. But let me tell you what they were also asked to do that they never did. I believe they were asked. It appeared as they were asked to, I believe they were asked, but they could have if they weren't asked. They were pretty smart generals. They could have attacked the train tracks leading into these concentration camps. So the trains wouldn't be able to bring them in. And it's not hard for, back then, an American plane to hit train tracks. Find a patch of train where there's nobody around for 5 or 10 miles and just come down low and drop the bomb on the track. And hit it in another place and another place, and you break it all up. Then they got to get workmen, they got to get parts, and they got to schlep out there and do the work and then come back. They never did it. So what are we seeing today from Biden? Let the aid in. Let them have water, let them have food, let them have medicine. Turn their internet back on. See what I'm saying? What is this going on? Don't listen to the words, listen to the actions. They're always going to have a good cover story while they're doing it, but look at the actions and look at their history. And look at Biden constantly saying two-state solution. He doesn't get off his soapbox with that, which is the salami theory. A salami comes in a long thing. And how does the salami theory work? You cut off a piece of salami, another piece, another piece, another piece, and then eventually there's no salami left. And Israel is no longer a nation. Piece by piece, dismantled. Okay? So, understand, they said they were going to, if Hezbollah opened up a second front, Biden publicly said it twice, and the Secretary of Defense and anyone else, that they would get involved in the fight against Hezbollah. Hezbollah, in any sane definition of the word, has opened up a second front. Now they're saying, well, it's not a real serious big second front. So, okay, so if they launch 1 or 200 rockets into Haifa and Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and the border areas, then we're going to assume that that's a bigger front, and it's what if they don't? Let's say 200 missiles come in and they hit Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and Haifa, and then the Americans just say, well, we don't want to start a whole big regional war over this. Maybe they won't continue. Would they ultimately do something? I think so. But they're ultimately something that they do, maybe pull out. They pulled out of Afghanistan rather suddenly and they left all their weapons there. They got a mountain of weapons in Jordan. What if they pull out suddenly and leave their weapons there? Now Jordan has these weapons. Remember a few weeks ago, Biden, no, don't do a ground invasion. Don't do it. Oh, do a little one. Do this, do that. Crazy, isn't it? Let me check the chat and see if I need to do anything. So God is never going to deliver Israel in any way that looks like Israel's own military did it, or America did it, or other countries did it. It's only going to come in a way that everybody knows it came from Jehovah. That's it. 2 witnesses. And they'll testify they're sent by Jehovah anyway, so you don't have to worry about that. And there you have it. That's as clear as I could put it. And it's sad they're looking at relying on America, and America's doesn't know what they're doing. They're not dealing with the Muslim terrorists in an appropriate manner. They think they are, but they're not. Let me see what else I can pick up here. Lebanon is now threatening our offshore drilling rig in the Mediterranean. Which is nice of them, huh? It's just great. We have some capability to defend against that. Second amendment, we should be with this. Can't get out of this. I think I fixed it. Let's see, we just got a red alert. Where's it coming? Maybe I didn't fix it. I did. Gaza, down by Gaza. See, they're still shooting missiles, constant, from Gaza. Last night we expanded the operation on the ground in Gaza, and there was gunfights, and we eliminated dozens of terrorists and destroyed a lot of their infrastructure. We hit hundreds of Hamas targets in Gaza, Hezbollah targets in South Lebanon. There were terrorist rocket launch sites in southern Syria after 2 missiles were fired at northern Israel. And we hit a terror cell in Jenin, which is West Bank. That's the terrorists calling the parents of the child he's tormenting and hurting. That's what they're doing, this peace-loving people. They get the phones from the people and they call the relatives and put them through this. Germany has had a 240% increase in anti-Semitism. In the U.S., Jewish university students are saying they're afraid to leave their rooms. Russia, there was a plane load of Israelis going back to Russia. They came originally from Russia. And there was people waiting at the airport for them to kill them in Russia. Putin managed to control it with security forces and had the plane divert to another airport. And they took them to Moscow, I believe. In the Caucasus region, these mobs took over public facilities looking for Jews to lynch. God is slowly but surely, not that slowly, showing all the Israelites in the world the only safe place to live is in Israel. It doesn't look like that now, but it is. And the true believers, the real believers, are also going to have to realize that too. Although God will protect them, but maybe they should be looking at it as the best place in the world to live very soon, very soon. A full-blown Holocaust seems to be brewing, doesn't it, around the world? They just told us that more forces of ours are rolling into Gaza. I hope they get it together to knock out the missiles. I'm most certain the Israeli generals would want nothing more than that right now. But I guess it's difficult. We hit Syria last night. America attacked and was attacked last night in the areas in Syria and Iraq near the Syria-Iraq border. The terrorists in Gaza were trying to hole up in buildings and stuff to shoot the soldiers, like 20 of them in one place, and we just called in a jet for airstrike, and that was the end of them. The Arabs are saying that we're having settlers attack them in the West Bank. Well, the problem with that is this. When you go into the settlements in Binyamin, Judea, and Samaria, there's relatively very few young, able-bodied men walking around. They're all in on the line in Lebanon or Gaza. So unless they're talking about the elderly, frail people or the women and the children attacking them, they're full of garbage. It's just lies. Hamas continues to block leaving. Hamas is blocking foreign nationals, including Brits, and Americans from leaving Gaza. These are not hostages. Okay. Britain was on Sunday working to rescue trapped citizens as civil disorder and looting broke out at the UN aid warehouse. Hamas probably wound up with all the food and water and medical stuff that the UN had in their warehouse. The White House's chief security advisor says the Egyptians are prepared to let American and other foreign nationals out of Gaza, and the Israelis have no issue with it, but Hamas does. They don't want them leaving. More human shields. And they're making a lot of demands. Netanyahu says he's not transferring the tax collection money to the Palestinian Authority this month. So America and the UN and the EU will come give him the money. That's all that happens. So Hamas is pretty desperate right now, and it looks like we're slowly but surely going to be sending more and more ground troops into Gaza. And they go in small groups and they hold a critical position. Maybe a route to move our tanks through, or maybe an observation point where rockets could be launched. They can see where the rockets are coming from and strike, and whatever. The Hamas people are saying that we're going to use a nerve gas in the tunnels. Well, I talked about that when it first happened. 300 miles of tunnels. Could you imagine how many tanks of gas you'd need You know those big oxygen tanks that are like 5 feet tall and they're about that thick in the hospital with nerve gas to get 300 miles worth of coverage in a tunnel? 100 of those wouldn't be enough. That's one every mile. You'd need like 3,000 of them. Then everybody would fall asleep. I told you Russia did that once at an event where they held people hostage. They just put everybody in the auditorium to sleep, hostages and terrorists. If they can't smell it and detect it, by the time they figure it out is when they're starting to fall down to sleep. I don't know, they probably stay out an hour or two or something like that. It may affect negatively people with heart conditions, very old and frail, babies. I don't know. I don't think it's feasible. I don't think you'll see it. Okay, I'm trying to give you the update, the latest news from social media in Israel. As long as we keep hearing rockets into Israel, things are not going well. Let's understand that. Israel keeps bombing enough places in Gaza, there's going to be no place left for the Gazans to live. We did some attacks from the Mediterranean on Gaza apparently last night. The Turkish hospital south of Gaza City had some major damage last night in the attacks. It was financed by Turkey. Last night, American warplanes attacked 7 trucks in the Syria-Iraq border area. So that would have been Iranian forces or some other trying to bring weapons in to attack the Americans with. I'm assumptive on that. Sources stated with the Shia Axis report that tonight, that's last night, American warplanes attacked the 7 trucks in the Syria-Iraq border area in Abu Kamal. These sources said that this morning, after the overnight American attack, the Shiite militias attacked the American base in Amir gas field in northern Syria with 15 rockets. See, Biden singing "Give Peace a Chance" isn't doing much good with the Iran. It's not working. Hey, Joe, come up with another plan, dude. Iran is saying that if the Americans know what to do, they're intelligent, they'll do a ceasefire. Israel will do a ceasefire, not America. Very good commentary. Ask yourself why it is so urgent for the Iranians to stop the fighting in Gaza. If their master plan was war on all fronts, then why act for a ceasefire instead of throwing more forces from other areas into the campaign? The campaign is not progressing as they had planned, and their Gazan proxy is suffering. And they also don't want to lose face by losing the Gaza war. And they want Hamas to be around to play again another day. This thing is not going to go the way Iran wants it to go, nor Hezbollah, nor Gaza, nor Biden, nor Netanyahu. It's going to go the way Jehovah wants it to go, and it's not going to be anything they understand or want. This you can take to the bank. Israeli tanks went to the Netzarim intersection in Gaza. See, we're taking over more and more pieces of Gaza. We're doing the reverse of the salami theory. You know, you cut a piece off and then you have nothing left. You take a piece, you take a piece, you take a piece, you take a piece, you take a piece. Then you got it all. They call it in Israel layat, layat, little by little. Works. This is the first time in the war that Gazans report and document. There was a video, I put it on Telegram, my Telegram. Document Israeli armored forces deep in the strip. Only the IDF was providing that information with backup video and pictures and stuff. The Netzarim intersection, that was a particular Jewish settlement that was evacuated in 2005. It's pretty deep in Gaza, so they're getting deeper and deeper. This is smart, what they're doing. But it's sad that the rockets keep coming. That's the problem. He's worrying, Biden and them are worrying about the hostages, but what about the people getting hit by the missiles in Israel? Don't pay attention to them. They always flavor it to make it look like they're saints. Well, don't worry about the hostages. What about the Jews taking rockets to the tune of 200 or 300 every day? What about them? Oh, where's the concern for them? It's absent. Wake up. It's not what they want you to think it is. But Jehovah knows everything they do. Don't worry. But don't believe them either. What Israel is doing is a pincher move. They're trying to splice or separate via tanks and armor North Gaza from South Gaza so they could isolate North Gaza, which is where the bad guys are. Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. That's tactically a massively good step, but the rockets still keep coming. How would you feel if you lived in Jacksonville, Florida, and Russian tanks had already entered Miami and were working their way up to you? See what they're going through now? The word is hysterical. The army is not going into residential neighborhoods. They're not going door to door, house to house, or anything like that. They're bringing um, bulldozers and tanks in, and I think they're opening up roads with bulldozers because they're afraid they have IED, improvised explosive devices, in the sides of the road, under the road, in the road, whatever. And then when vehicles spawn visual go by, boom, they push a detonator and blow them up. So the bulldozers are armored and they got this big, thick steel scoop, and it's probably an inch thick or something, it's not going to be hurt by an IED. And it just rakes up the ground, and if it's an IED there, it can't be 11 feet down, it has to be pretty close to the surface. It rips it up. If it detonates, it detonates. They keep publishing propaganda statements in their social media, the enemy does, to make the people feel confident that things are going to be okay. Yeah, nobody's coming to their aid. They got to keep the morale up for the people to keep them in the game, If the civilians are so innocent, why do they call them martyrs when they die? Martyrs are only for warriors. That should be asked at the UN. China's moved 30,000 special forces from across their country to Beijing, so they're worried about something, probably in the realm of revolution or something, or maybe an invasion. I don't know what they're worried about. Troops aren't going to do much good with an invasion because it's going to be initially with rockets, missiles, bombs, drones. Take a peek at the chat here and see if I need any questions to be answered. Don't look like it. Let me change it to all the messages and see if I'm missing anything. Thank you for your posts, Paulie. Okay, I think I accomplished what I was trying to accomplish today. So, my wife is Rivka and I'm Moshe. Please pray for us for our peace, safety, protection, joy. Pray my area doesn't get attacked and I don't have to go to bomb shelters. Please pray for the animals and pets that are all rescues, the birds and dogs. They'd be happy, healthy, and whole. Pray for the ultimate peace of Jerusalem. Pray every day, read the word, even if you just read maybe this much of the word or this much, but more is better. Make sure you read the word every day. And make sure you pray every day. Don't stop praying, don't stop reading the word. Even if you read a half a page or something, read the word every day. And those of you that do spiritual warfare, keep it up. Thank you for the offerings, they're much appreciated. And I will keep you updated. Make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell. Things can happen suddenly, and I'll jump on with live streams on YouTube and Telegram and also Twitter. There's not much happening in Twitter. He censors so much over there. I don't do much with that. I just put the YouTube videos up on Twitter. There's not that much going on. All right. So I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach, and I am out.